Welcome back. Today I'm making this adorable mummy cake. So this cake is actually made with some cake layers that I made in advance. I double wrapped them in plastic wrap to help keep them fresh. They were in the freezer for about 2 weeks. So if you ever are in a pinch or don't have time to make a cake all in one day, never hesitate to make cake layers in advance. They freeze super well. I then leveled the cake tops and trimmed off any bits of caramelization from the side before stacking our cake layers. If you guys want to learn more about how to make a cake layer in advance, you can click the link in the upper right corner. So just like always, I've added a dab of buttercream to my grease-proof cake board to help keep that bottom layer in place. And I'm now adding an even layer of buttercream. So you can see I'm using both Oreo and funfetti cake layers. I took one batch of my vanilla cake base and I added sprinkles to half of it and Oreos to the other. So I'm matching the filling between each layer to the cake layer that I've added. So for the sprinkle layer, I'm going to add some rainbow sprinkles. And then on top of our next cake layer, I'm going to add a generous sprinkle of crushed Oreos. This just adds a little bit of extra texture and makes the inside of the cake even more fun. So once all of my cake layers were stacked, I put that top layer upside down just to make it easier to frost. I find that the parts of the cake layer that touch the pan make it easier to get a nice sharp edge because they're nice and flat. So I'm covering my cake now in a thin coat of frosting, which is going to be our crumb coat. I'm smoothing it with my bench scraper, and then I'm going to pop this cake into the freezer for about 10 minutes to allow it to firm up. During this time, I'm going to work on my mummy's eyes. So you could always use store-bought eyes or like eyeball sprinkles, I guess you'd call them. But I really like to make my own eyes because I think that so much of a cake's expression and fun is based on the face that you add to it. So I added some cornstarch to my board before I rolled out my fondant to prevent it from sticking, and then I used some circle cutters to create these different size circles. I'm adding a little bit of vodka between each layer of fondant to help it stick to itself. I then mixed together some gel food coloring and a little bit of vodka to paint the irises of the eyes. So I wanted this mummy to really look spooky and have a real Halloween vibe, so I decided to use both purple and green. I then used another circle cutter to cut out the little mummy's mouth, and then it was time to prep the cake with its second layer of frosting. Even though we're going to be piping tons of thick ribbons of buttercream around this cake to be the mummy's wrappings, I wanted the base to be a different color, so I swirled together some green, purple, and black buttercream that I happened to have left over from another project, which made it a bit more convenient, but I chilled that in the freezer and then added a bit of extra green buttercream to help add the mummy's eyes. And then it was time to start piping on those wrappings. I keep wanting to say stripes, but wrappings. I'm using a super thick frosting tip here. It's a Wilton 789, and I'll include the link to it below, but it's perfect for this type of cake. So as you're doing this, just try to kind of make stripes in different directions, so that way once the cake is fully covered, it'll look like the bandages are going all the way around this little mummy's head. It definitely takes a bit of hand strength and a lot of frosting, so you can see in the recipe that I included quite a bit of frosting for this cake. Once you feel like you've sufficiently covered the mummy's head, you can go ahead and press his mouth into place. To make this cake a tiny bit more exciting, I also made some little spiders out of black fondant, which is not the easiest thing. It definitely requires a lot of patience to kind of roll out those little legs, but I really thought they made the mummy look even more playful. Next, I chilled the cake in the freezer for about 15 minutes to allow the ribbons or buttercream wrappings to firm up, and then I dusted the edges of them with some black cocoa and a clean paintbrush. I thought this made the mummy look a little bit older, a tiny bit more realistic, or as realistic as a cartoon mummy can get. But that's it, our mummy cake is complete. Now it's time to cut in and see those delicious layers of Oreo and funfetti cake. Just like always, I cut a pretty massive slice, and of course I color coordinated my knife to my cake. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you did, be sure to click the like and subscribe buttons below if you haven't already. And also, if you want to recreate this cake, you can always find the recipe on Chelsweets.com. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you guys again soon.